Okay, you guys, let's get started on the apple tart with the streusel topping. And I'm going to show you just how to do one apple. I've already prepared the other three. So wash them, and then the best thing to do is when you peel them is you kind of peel the bottom and peel the top, and then just connect the two by going around the apple. That is actually the quickest way I find to peel the apple. But you do what works for you. I honestly don't care if there's a little bit of skin left on it. That's fine. These are very tart apples. Green apples hold up really nicely in baking. They don't tend to fall apart. So then what you want to do is you want to do a nice little small dice. So instead of cutting the apple in half and coring it, what I do is go ahead and do two slices, about a little quarter of an inch, and then I turn the apple and I do two slices again, so that I'm not getting to the core, and then that last two, flip it over, two more slices, and then what you have left is just that core that goes in the trash. Line up your pieces, cut them either once or twice. I cut them twice. And then again, you can do bigger dice. I like the nice little ones for this tart. They'll lay down nicely. If you like them to stay a little crunchier, you can go a little bigger. I wouldn't go too big. They won't cook, and then you'll just kind of have raw apple on your tart. So slice those up one way, and again slice them another. Put them in. Now I gave you the flour and the sugar. They are not measured, and if you look at your recipe, you're going to need flour for your pastry dough as well as in your streusel topping, and you're going to need some of that sugar in your streusel topping. So let's go ahead and get this started. So I gave you a cup of sugar, so go ahead and find your half a cup dry measuring cup, and what I'm going to do is level that out. I'll do a little bit more. Okay, so add half a cup of sugar to the apples, and then that little 1 teaspoon of cinnamon I gave you, and that's it. So we're going to stir these up. Preheat your oven to 425, and let's go ahead and move on into making the pastry dough. I'm actually going to go ahead and do the streusel topping next. And what you need for that, again, you're going to need your half cup measuring cup, half cup dry. So I'm going to use the back of my knife to measure it correctly. So that's half a cup of flour. And then it should be that last half a cup of sugar, but I'm going to double check. Is. And then you're going to use the quarter cup of butter that I gave you, and it's cold still, so you want to go ahead and again cut it. If you don't have that little pastry blender, you can use the dinner fork, or in this one you can even go ahead and use your fingertips to kind of break it up. So I'm going to cut it one way into nice little slices. Off, and then stack it up and cut it the other way. I think I may have talked to a student too who wanted to know about another way to do it. You can also grate your butter by using your cheese graters. You can just kind of take the cheese or the butter real cold and grate it into the mixture that way. Okay, let's do this last little bit. And then when I do like making pastry in the strudel, I don't mind using my hands. They're clean. And I'm going to be serving my family, not anybody else, so I can do it. So I can even get in here with the fork, toss it with the flour. And then again, I just get in here with my fingers and I'm kind of pinching it and kind of just breaking up the butter into smaller even pieces and really just kind of mixing that flour and that sugar around. It's going to be hard to rewind the video or turn it off because your hands might be sticky, so you can also do just one-handed if you wanted to. And what you want to do is almost get it to where, again, you can't see any of that butter. If you wanted to use a food processor, you could. I would maybe just pulse it 20 times just so that you can still see little pieces of it and it not be completely hidden. So this process that we've talked about before of what's called cutting in the fat can be done a couple of ways. But again, we've used it when we made the arugula. We did it again when we did the biscuits. And we're going to do it now for also the pastry dough as well as the streusel topping. All right, I'm going to continue to do this. Let me get my one hand clean, and I'll come back and we'll start. Okay, for step 3, we're going to move into making the pastry dough. And now I have my third bowl out. Let's start with the 1.5 cups of flour. So again, taking the flour I gave you, just double checking your measurements. It's 1/2 cup, 1 cup, and just to double check. Might have just a little over on the flour. All right, so into the flour, then you're going to add the salt, which I will go grab, and your 1/2 cup of your vegetable shortening. So you might want to, again, break that up into the smaller pieces, cut it up. And you're going to just cut the shortening into the mixture, okay, using your fork, fingers, pastry cutter, whatever you have. All right, then the next thing you're going to do is you need 1 egg, and you want to always crack it into a separate bowl, not ever directly into the pastry. And you're going to use 2 to 3 tablespoons of ice water, and it may change depending on how your pastry is coming together. So let me go grab the salt. I'm going to need a tablespoon, and I'm going to finish cutting this in, and I'll be right back to show you to finish. So I added my salt into here, and what I'm doing now, again using just the fork, is cutting the shortening. So what's nice is the shortening is actually going to be able to take that higher temperature, that 425, and it's going to become a really nice flaky dough on the bottom, and it's going to be a really thin bottom as well. And then the butter that's in the streusel will melt and crisp up that topping that's on there. Okay, so I'm basically got the shortening in there to where you can't see it. And then to my egg yolk, I'm going to start with just 2 tablespoons of water. And I do have a little bit of flour if my pastry seems to be a little too wet. So I'm going to do just the 2 tablespoons, and it's ice water. I just took that right out of the fridge. Remember, anytime we make pastry, everything is nice and cold. So 1.5 cups of flour, the 1/2 teaspoon of salt, the 1/2 cup of vegetable shortening, and in here I have the 1 egg and the 2 tablespoons of water. I'm just going to add all of that in there and just using the fork to go in and combine. Now it is a wet dough, and we're going to get it combined. So the other thing I have ready to go is my baking pan, and this is kind of where you guys can leave it up to you to see what you have. You can free-form it on your half-sheet pan or your baking sheet that you have at home. I happen to have a 14-inch, I'm going to use a pizza pan. So right now I'm just going to set it under there. You can see this is starting to come together, and you want it just to make sure there's no dough stuck on the sides of the bowl. Clean your fork off. And then you can kind of go in once it's really pretty dry. You're just going to you can smash it together. Now, if you've got some that's really like dry on the bottom, that's what that last little tablespoon is for. So I would do no more than 3. And again, it should be depending on how you guys measured your flour correctly. If you just dumped that whole container in, chances are you might even need some more water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the fork off, and I'm going to show you. So with the dough, I can literally just squeeze it together and get it to kind of form. I just want to make sure none of the flour is there. Okay. And I'm just doing it in the bowl, because why do I need to make a mess? So it all came together. It's starting to get sticky. Okay. Clean it all out of my bowl. And this is the easy part with this dough. We're not looking at doing any rolling. We don't need a rolling pin. We don't need any extra flour. What you do with this dough is you just take it, break off little pieces of it, and press it down in the bottom of the pan to a nice little thin layer. Now, if you're going to freeform it, maybe you go ahead and roll that into a ball and roll it to a little bit, but the dough itself, when you finish it in this pan, should be very thin and big. If it's too thick, you're going to have this doughy base. Okay? So again, just kind of, I'm just breaking it off, pressing it down. It's kind of like a little bit like a Play-Doh. You know, you're just going to form it all around. Okay, I'm going to finish doing this. I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll start to layer our toppings. Let's finish putting together the tart. So you can see I pulled mine off the edge just a tiny bit, but I worked it out. Again, it's a really nice, thin, tiny little layer. So didn't have to grease it, doesn't need parchment or anything. That shortening is more than enough fat. It's going to help it crisp up and lift off just fine. So this is that mixture of those apples, right? Those really nice little thin, small diced apples. And I'm just going to go ahead and stir them. They started to get a little bit of a juice because we added some of the sugar, and it starts to do what's called macerate, and that pulls the juice of the apple out. It's going to thicken up. It's going to get, those juices will get absorbed by that streusel. So I just want to make sure it's an even coating. So here's what I do. I start and just put everything kind of right into the middle and let it kind of spread out. I like to leave a small little edge on my crust. Not a big one, so it's kind of like a pizza. But I'm just going to take it out. And again, if the apples are too thick and you want to spread them out a little bit farther, then go ahead. So I kind of pull them back in a little bit as I'm spreading them out. But I get a nice, just use the back of your spoon, move it out, but a nice little layer of those apples all around. That looks pretty good. Again, make sure it's not too high. You don't want it like higher in the middle. You don't want that mountain. So that's why you kind of definitely want to spread them out. Again, I like to be a little neat with it. Now, if you want bigger apples or slices, you can do that. I don't get really fancy or waste too much time on those knife cuts because, again, it's going to get completely covered when we do this streusel topping. So you don't have to, again, be really pretty, but you can see I got that pretty broken up, right? All the butter is a small little chunk, and you're going to use all of this. Don't think you don't have to. So I kind of can start, let it fall into around those edges, do a nice little layer, and I still kind of stay off that little crust, and that's going to help me when I go to try to lift it out. Here, let's make it easy. Just pour it all in there, and then kind of rub it around. Some of it falls down on the edge. Just pick it up. It'll be fine, but then just do that nice little even layer all the way around. And it's going to melt and kind of toast, and it's going to brown, get really nice and golden brown into the crust. So this goes in that really hot oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. And again, depending on your oven, I'll check it at 30, maybe even at 20. Just kind of spin it in your oven a little bit front to back and make sure that it's just baking evenly. So I'll show you what it looks like when we're done.